Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Berkshire Hathaway Home Services California Realty Forever Agent Mastermind. This is our all-company mastermind. We have these on the second and fourth Wednesdays of every month. And we cover a myriad of topics. Right now, we're kind of in a series on landing listings, right? So preparing ourselves to be the best listing agents and dominate the market wherever we serve. We've gone through, we started way back with going through the individual pieces of the new landing listings presentation. Again, that's available on Resource Center under the landing listings tab. I suggest you get a free Canva account and then look for the Canva link, download that, landing listings Canva, download it, customize it, super easy, only 2 places to customize. Save it as a PDF, and then you can print it in your office on a nice binded book. It looks like a coffee table book. Include your CMA in that, and so your managers and office managers know how to get that done for you. And then we broke down the each of the sections. There's 3, if you will, sections in the landing listings marketing proposal: marketability, price, exposure, and price. And I put them in there in that order specifically because I think that's the way that the presentation should go. At least that's the way we're training on it. Reason being, and I'll take all arguments on that, but reason being, you start with price and you get to the milk, if you will, and they're not going to listen to anything else. If they like what you said, they're not going to listen, and then you don't get a chance to really connect with them as a client, as a person, build rapport through the process, and you don't get to dive deep on the tools that you're using, and that educates them and lets them know what kind of professional you are and better positions you for referrals. And frankly, if you're not right about the price, they don't listen to anything else anyway, or you don't agree with their price, they stop listening anyway. And I also think the reason we do it in marketability, exposure, price is because everybody else does it kind of heads right for the price and then fills in the rest. And we want to radically differentiate ourselves in the market, and that's just another way that we can do that. So we then moved on to the pre-listing packet, which I've created. I gave some 7 things that you should include in your pre-listing packet. And the idea on that is that, again, you want to differentiate yourself. You make the appointment, and then you send them some sort of a value-driven kind of document that has those 7 things in it. All this information is on the landing listings tab in Resource Center. There are videos that we've done on it. And you send that out prior to the appointment. I suggest that there's a video component in there so they can see you and start bonding with you and building rapport. And then you prepare for the listing. And so that's kind of at the, we talked a little bit about building rapport last time. And so these 2 topics, I guess, could have been switched in the timeline. But what we're going to talk about today is kind of the pricing piece, right? We're going to get a little granular on how to comp a property. Now, I have a good, I've got 30 or so people on this call, and they range, as I look, they range everybody that's been in the business for 2 weeks to 20 years. So there's going to be a lot of tribal knowledge in this on this call, and so I want to call on that. I will remind everybody, I'm letting people in here as I speak. Remind everybody that you're going to get the most out of this if you turn your camera on and interact with your fellow forever agents. And if you want to have a comment, I absolutely welcome them and in fact encourage them. And you can either raise your hand, put it in chat, and I'll call on you, or you can put it in chat, and if you have a problem with your mic or whatever, I will read the question. So, and again, what we're going to try to do is I'll give you kind of modus operandi on how I look at the pricing, how to comp a house, how to talk about what pricing is, and then kind of how to talk about it. But I also want to get your feedback as well. So anybody have any questions, challenges, horror stories, wins, anything regarding pricing strategy that they want to regale us with before we get started? I know Cerise had a weird one in LA that, and I think that happens when you kind of start going out of your, where you wake up and drive every day, you start going into different markets. I think Cerise had a pretty interesting experience with pricing a house in LA, and it was, I think I looked at it, she looked at it, we're like, yeah, that's it. We're a little bit, I guess, surprised and interested. So that's a great house, and we'll have her report on if we got it right or not.
Hey Todd, it's Nancy. I really don't have a specific story, but I do have a client that might want to sell a duplex. And I know that for duplexes, it's a little bit more complicated because you don't have as many examples, right? So I would be curious to hear your input as far as any general advice when it comes to those properties. Not sure.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Well, I'll do everything I can to. That's a good question, and I think there are by just percentage, a lower percentage of multifamily, but it's a great market to have. It's a great opportunity. You can live in one and rent the other one out. You can rent them both out. It's be a great way to begin help a client begin a real estate empire. And yeah, there is I think traditionally, you just gotta find other units, right? You gotta find other 2 to 4 units will work, right? Yeah. 2 on a lot, those kind of things. But then there's a you can do a rent survey, and you can do what's a little bit more complicated, which is a kind of a cost analysis. So you can break down provide a cap rate, break down the expenses, and so that's probably a class all to its own. And in all honesty, it's been a while since I've done it, so I wouldn't probably be I would have to educate myself, remind myself, and but that's I would start out with looking, and I would say that you could stretch we'll talk about, I'll try to use that as an example, because we're going to talk about some of the things when you're looking for comps, the basics of looking for comps, and how we can get that.
Sounds good, thanks.
The things we can move. So I'll try to use an example. Anybody else like to cover anything specific today, or have any specific questions or comments before we get kicked off? Okay. Jump in to this then. And there we go. Okay, so when we're talking about building a pricing strategy with comparable and competitive properties, I use the two words there, and I would love to, as we're trying to eliminate the phrase listing appointment from your vocabulary as it relates to customer facing opportunities, right? If you haven't picked up on that, we're trying to elevate what we do beyond that of a listing appointment, right? That I've told this story, that's what the word listing comes from, a list on the general store back in cowboy days of homesteads that were available and what rock to turn left at to go see it, to go, meet the farmer or whatever. And I think we've elevated beyond that. And so what we're suggesting and really training for is using the term marketing proposal, right? And I think that same can be said with the word comparable versus competitive, right? And like a famous quote from Confucius, understanding the value of things begins with naming them properly, right? And so you sit down with a client that's raised their family, you know, Jamie was born in the house and now she's going to college and that's why they're selling. To tell them that we're going to compare that to somebody else, another house, it kind of already, in my opinion, and in the opinion of kind of, you know, the thinkers in our industry, which don't worry, I don't include myself in one, I just listen to them. That kind of sets people on their, tends to set people on their heels. And it isn't super accurate. Sure, they're comparable, but kind of hard to compare. We've been, unless you're in, you know, East Highland and your comps are 10 model matches, kind of hard to compare. So I encourage the word competitive because those are the houses that buyers will be looking at, especially the available properties that are competing in the market with us. And they're also those competitive prices that we're trying to beat, right? We're trying to get our clients the highest in the market, in the value for that condition, for that house. So we're competing with the rest of the market. So that's for what it's worth. So I'm going to go over three things real quick, and then we'll open it up for some discussion as it relates to dealing with competitive and comparable properties. We're going to talk about tools. We're going to talk about technique, and we're going to talk about telling the story, okay? So as far as tools, you know, I think you start with realist. You get what you've made your appointment, you've got your lead, you converted them to an appointment, you've sent out a pre-appointment package that has the 7 things that we suggest are in it. You've started to build rapport and transfer value, build trust with that client. And then you dive into the property. So of course, start with realist, see what's there. If you can drive the comps, do so, right? I do want to do this. Before I get started, I meant to do this. Let me launch this poll real quick, and that'll give us something to talk about. When you're choosing comps, go ahead and answer the poll. Honestly, it's anonymous, so you just use whatever the title company gives you. I've had people, and someone will ask that question. I've given this talk before, and the question was, well, can I just use the comp the title company gives me? And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you what I think about that. I'm not going to bet, you know. I want you to be honest. If that's what you do, please be honest. Search MLS and hand choose a smaller percentage. And I need 5 more people. I'll give you another 15 seconds to answer the poll. If you're on, lots of people, if they're on their phones or listening in the car or whatever, they can't answer. So we won't. Anybody else want to answer? 5, 4, 3, there's 1, 2, 1. Okay, let me end the poll. 17, I got one in right at the last minute. Good. So 17 out of 19 people. Let me share the results. So we've got one person that says they use what the title company gives me. I'd imagine that's probably you. If you answered that, are you willing, the person out there, are you willing to tell me why you do that? And if it's because you're new and you're waiting for me to give this class, that's fine. Again, you're not necessarily wrong, and I'll tell you why. I don't want to put you on the spot because you're not wrong. If that's the only thing you use, I think that that there's some growth there. Most people search the MLS and hand choose the market. I'm surprised. I'm pleasantly surprised that the number 3 there, I give all market activity. You know, I talk to and have dealt with some agents in the past that they give so many comps, right? I mean, you know, just 40. And, you know, my mom was a top producing agent at Sue Miller in the San Bernardino market. And that was kind of her strategy. And it worked. I mean, she killed it for a lot of years. She would just give them so much data. And it was just kind of like, trust me, right? And they did. So I don't know that anymore with the information that's out there. That's a great strategy. Personally, I'm in the last category there. I hand choose the comps and I look at the title data because I want to look at title data to make sure I'm not missing anything that's not on the MLS, right? Something that was a like a FSBO, right? If it was a arm's length transaction, taxable transaction, and you could tell it by if it was, oops, let me invite people. Sorry if you've been waiting in the waiting room for too long. I got on a roll and forgot to look up at the corner there. So anyway, it is possible that you'll pick something up that didn't go through the MLS, as long as it has a tax doc stamps on it and it's an arm's length transaction and has a price that makes sense and that kind of thing. Sometimes you'll see them and because they were transferred between siblings or whatever, it doesn't make sense. But okay, anyway, let's get back. I did share the results, right? Okay, shop sharing. All right, let's jump back into this. So again, start with realist, and we're going to talk about driving the comps. If you can, drive them, right? If you can't, the tool here is Google Earth, right? Sometimes either time or distance or a combination of both will prevent you from driving the comps. I always suggest worst case, get yourself out there 15, 20 minutes early before your appointment and drive them real quick. If nothing else, so you can position them in your mind where they are to your house. And when you're sitting in the living room making the presentation and you point up, Arthur Street, and you can gesture toward Arthur Street, it's actually toward the general direction of Arthur Street. And one, it makes you look like you know what you're doing, where you're at. Makes you look like you know the market, even if you don't. And that's helpful. Transfers trust, builds rapport, right? So, but Google Earth's a great tool. You can walk the neighborhood, walk the street. You may look at a comp and go, man, something's wrong with that. That looks higher, looks lower, looks weird. Take a look on Google Earth, and you can see, oh, it's right next to the drainage ditch, or it's got a water tank over it, or there's the electrical poles, or those kind of things. So Google Earth, don't be afraid to use that. I think well-chosen MLS search criteria reveals the most relevant and recent market activity. We'll talk about that in technique. Use the Cloud CMA graphical interface. It's understandable analysis tools and makes the data understandable and readable. Anybody not use Cloud CMA? Put in the comments if you use the CMA on the MLS. Throw a MLS in the comments so we can kind of see that. I think most people have migrated over to Cloud CMA. It's a free CMA. We are, as we introduce Cabernet Connect, there's a piece on that will provide some really interesting graphical interface for data. And so I'm excited about that. But Cloud CMA has got some good stuff. It's easy to use. Taking the time to prepare a simple Excel spreadsheet allows you to highlight the most usable information. So at the very end, I'll show you guys how to export. A lot of people didn't know. You can export data from the MLS, cut out what you don't need. It'd probably take you 30 minutes to create a nice little spreadsheet, do some, use the Excel functions to create some averages and display it nicely. But I like it because it just gives me the data, exactly what I'm looking for, how I'm looking for it, only what I need. And if I'm talking to a real analytical person, I can really use that. That's one thing that we talked about in the past. You got to read your audience, right? And if they're an artist, you're going to present information in a different way than if they're an architect, right? Or a engineer. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about technique. Anybody have questions on the tool? Anybody have a better tool or a different understanding of the tools that are available out there? Natasha used the MLS. I'd encourage you, Natasha, to check out Cloud CMA. I'll do a Cloud CMA real quick before that at the end here. No comments on tools. All right. Oh, I got a chat. RPR. I've not used RPR. That's the new one on MLS, right? Yeah. Anybody have any? Have they used the RPR one? Yeah. I will look into that though. It's just something. Katrina says that she's used it, so maybe you and Nancy and Katrina talk about that offline and see what. Again, it's pick something that you can explain. If you can explain and are comfortable with the MLS CMA one, then use that. It just doesn't have in my experience, I've used it in a while, but it doesn't have the most user-friendly graphical interface, and Cloud CMA does. And there's an NPR class coming up at IVAR, which is cool. So yeah, just pick one that you like, that you can incorporate in your presentation seamlessly, right? I guess that's the big point. So let's talk about technique, right? So again, I'm one guy. I've been doing this for since the MLS is on paper, but I don't have all the answers, and there's smarter people on this call than I, so speak up if you have something different than I have. But this is generally how I look at coming up with competitive and comparable properties. So I believe in starting narrow and expanding if necessary, right? Again, we're not appraisers. We're not trying to do an appraisal, but we still have that to contend with. And every class I give, everything I say, the caveat is sometimes this market, excluded, right? It could be argued that appraisal schmazel, people bring in the difference, right? I think that okay, but it isn't always going to be that way. And if you're a forever agent, that means you're going to be in this industry through the ups and downs, through buyer's market, seller's market. So I think a good understanding of how to look at coming up with a value that you can stand behind and defend, and we'll talk about that, needs to be expanded beyond, well, I don't need to do that right now, right? So anyway, I like to start narrow and expand if necessary. Appraisers are going to generally want to look at something, a comp within a half a mile that is within 90 to 120 days old, or 0 to 120 days old, really. If you can find them 90 and they're higher, then of course use them. About a 300, 500 square foot delta on the square footage, right? Anything much bigger, you're starting to get into almost another house. And anything much smaller, you start to really get into kind of functional obsolescence. So I would stay within those ranges. 10-year built, sometimes that's tough, but it changes. If it's a 1995 house, you could go higher, right? Probably you could go into the higher 2000s, maybe 1999 house. You could get above 2010. But if it's a 1940 house and you try to compare it with a 1970s house, you're going to have some problem with that, right? So think about 10 years on either side. And I try to do similar style, and I guess what I really mean is if I can find all one stories. If it's a one story subject property, then I'm going to really try to compare it against one story other houses. If it's a vintage craftsman, if it's, you know, a two-story contemporary, you know, so I'll try to match as much as I can there, and then amenities match. I think that includes lot size, condition to a certain extent, a pool, those kind of HOA. I think that it's really tough if you're in an HOA and it doesn't have a lot of sales in that area, and you push out beyond that complex and you're comparing against houses that don't have HOAs, you're going to end up with a problem, in my opinion. So you want to be able to find something and push out to a more, even if you have to go beyond these parameters, HOA is a pretty important one. And then knowing the area, of course, allows you to pick the right side of the street. So when I'm comping something out, and I'll show you, the first thing I do is I draw a circle to give me what's a bird's eye, as the crow flies, half a mile or a mile. I kind of see where am I talking about? And then because I know the area, when I do, or I've looked at it significantly on Google Maps, or I've driven it or whatever, I can say, oh yeah, this is really, we got to stay on this. This over across Lincoln becomes super dicey, or it's a lot better, or they're bigger or whatever, different vibe, different whatever. There's a flood channel on the riverside, or the Gage Canal. One side of the Gage Canal is completely different than the other side of the Gage Canal, right? And so stuff like that. Keep in mind, you may need to defend your choices, right? Know your comps, know your market. This is important, I think, and it may be controversial, but I'll stand behind it. You're not looking for market value, guys. You're not an appraiser. What you're looking for is the highest possible defendable value position, right? You want to be able to suggest to your client that they will list with the intent of selling at the highest possible defendable value position. You can't throw a dart at the wall and expect people to come in line with you. Now, you may be able to sell it for that, and if they could bring, and it doesn't appraise, and you can have them bring in the difference, then super, you win. But if those planets don't align, you have to be able to say, well, here's how I chose, right? And I actually go to all my appraisals, and I suggest you do too. I bring a list of comps that I brought. I know Cerise and some of the other folks on this call are masters at this as well. And a little write-up, a little why, and if nothing else, I just hand to the appraiser and say, listen, I just want you to know I didn't throw a dart at this, right? I thought through, this is what I used, and this is how I came to this opinion. And I think that you get appraisers that are either have two attitudes. They look to prove or look to disprove. Now, of course, they're just trying to get to the value. They're trying to be objective, but humans have a slant. And so if I can push someone over to, oh yeah, okay, I can see where they're coming from. I can lead them down that pathway. I'm not saying it works 100% of the time, and I'm certainly not saying you can decide an appraiser's mind for them or influence them, but humans get led where you lead them. So why not? Okay, any questions on technique? Anybody want to fight me on any of that? I think I noticed Colleen came on. She usually has amazing insights and ideas. I've got, so I have on here, yep, Colleen's on here. I must be doing okay if Colleen's okay, I must be doing okay. Michelle,
I'm listening.
Okay. You let me know if I mess something up, Colleen.
I said you're doing great. There's nothing to add.
Okay. Super. All right, let's jump on. No one else? Let's jump on to tell the story. So that's really what you're doing, right? You're telling the story. And how you tell the story, I joke in my presentation when I'm talking about, and this really speaks to how you start to introduce the pricing strategy, right? You are not trying to set a price for your clients. You're not helping them, in my opinion, set a price for their house, right? That will be a product. You got to start somewhere, right? That'll be a product. But what your goal is to develop and communicate and have their agreements upon a pricing strategy, right? And again, in this market, there's still a pricing strategy. I personally think I'm having most success, and I think some of the people that are killing it out there would agree with me, and some may not. I'd like to hold back a little bit. If I've got a property that I think is going to sell for 800 and get activity 800, and I may say let's go on at 792 or 94, whatever, and it will look great on the market. It'll be a little bit low. Buyers are being conditioned that things are going to sell above asking, right? They kind of know that. So if you price something let's price it high enough. Let's price it at 820, and then they can offer me 805, and I'll take it, right? Buyers are generally thinking, let me see, 820, add 3% to that. Oh, I can't afford that. They went the wrong way. They don't even look at the property because your guy would have taken 805, but they're thinking they got to pay 850 for it and bring in a appraisal. You're going to possibly miss that. So I think the strategy, and it's still a strategy, is to create some urgency, get it on the market, huge exposure with a price that is enticing. Get some people in love with the property. Once they're in it and in love with it, and the market puts pressure on them with subsequent or competing offers, you've got this emotional tie. They've already moved their kids in that house in their head, and you can push often above where they would have came in if you just price it at, let's say, 805. Okay, if that makes sense to everybody, and I'll take feedback on that. But regardless, it's a strategy, right? It's hard to, frankly, it's hard to get it wrong, right? If you're too low, you'll get a bunch of activity offers, bid it up, it'll be fine. If you're too high, you'll be the only person talking about that house, and you'll know it, right? And that's time to act, and it's time to act quickly. Pricing strategy is simply knowing that you're going to react to the market feedback, right? So if you price something and your instinct is this is high and you're not getting showings, right? There's three things that sell houses: marketability, exposure, and price. If it is as marketable as it could be, right? If you're taking care of staging, merchandising, if you will, the curb appeal is great. You've got it decluttered. You've done all those things. It's a good looking listing. You've exposed it. You've got great pictures, Matterport tour, videos. You've done social media posts on it. You've done invites to the neighborhood. You've done open houses. You're really killing it on all the exposure pieces, and you're not getting anything. Three things, you got to change one of them. And in my opinion, you got to change two, never change one, right? Price, pick something new marketing thing to do, right? Pick something, okay, we need to replace the plants in the front. Maybe we didn't do it and we thought we should. Maybe we need to paint the bedroom that's purple, whatever it is, right? So that is a pricing, that is as long as you can communicate that to the seller, that's our pricing strategy. Is we're going to try here, but if feedback is X, we will need to adjust. And if you have somebody that's, they want to price high and they're not going to go lower, but you want to take the listing, you don't want, because someone else is going to take it. There's nothing wrong. I've done this before where I'll do an amendment to a modification that is signed with the listing agreement that says on day 15, the price goes to X. If we don't have an offer on day 15, the price goes to X. So we can try your price. The problem is I'm going to market the heck out of it, and I'm going to blow the first 2 weeks, which is most important. But if that's what you want, I'll swing at the bleachers with you. But once we get to point X, it goes down, and it's already in the contract. So I've had some success with that. So tell a story. Sorry, a little bit of a tangent, but what's happened, what's happening, and what may happen, right? I tell sellers, one of my scripts is, so you want me to read the tea leaves for you a little bit, right? You want me to tell you what's going to happen in 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, depending on the market. I can do that. How I'm going to do it is by looking at what has happened, sold, what's happening, pendings in the market, and what may happen, the actives, or another word for that is competition. They don't buy your house. They could very well buy something else, right? Okay. Look at all the pictures. Be ready to point out condition amenities and functional differences. You should know the comparable competitive properties that you're using in this pricing strategy. You should know them as well as your subject, right? You should know them. You should know, oh, that's the one with the bathroom that has. And I realize that may be lofty, but you just need to look at them, internalize them, make notes on them, look at them a couple of times, because the more you can transfer that knowledge to the seller, the more trust you'll build during the process. Make notes based on the criteria or have them ready to pull up digitally and discuss with the homeowner, right? You have something that you can refer to that will start pointing out the differences or similarities between the subject property and any of these comparative and competitive properties you use. And then use micro market area to make determinations on similar superior aspects as it relates to market activity, right? What does that mean? Micro markets, right? If you're selling a property that's near a school, right? Well, can I see the school from here? Or is the school right there, right? Across the street or on the corner? What's the difference, right? You may have the positive aspect of school right around the corner, walk to school distance. Great. Same micro market may have a negative impact between 7:30 and 9:30 and 2:30 and 4:30. What are you going to have on your street, right? 1,000 cars picking up kids, right? That may be a negative in that micro market. Road noise is one, right? Convenience of ingress and egress, right? Are you selling your comparables? Is your property inside a complex where it takes 20 turns to get there, or is it easier to get? Take a look at those things when you're really diving deep on these comparative and competitive properties. Anybody have anything? Any questions on that? I wanted to go through it. I wanted to keep a little some time to jump on the MLS and kind of walk through how I comp a property. Anybody have anything to share or add?
Can I share something?
Love to have you. Please, Debbie.
Okay, I have a potential listing coming up down in LA, and the client lives in Nevada, and he's thinking, he knows I'm in the Riverside area, and he's thinking, like, is that too far for me to drive? So the other weekend there was open houses right around his home. So I went down, checked out the open houses, the traffic, just to see how many buyers are out and about looking at that price point. And I went by, there's a community garden. So the next time I spoke with him, I shared that I saw the community garden in the community. And he was really impressed with that. He was impressed that I went there, that I went through the open houses, that I checked out the community. It was far, but it was worth it to me.
Yes, absolutely. That brings up because I also help out with trying to expand, trying to make agents money by expanding their market beyond their geographical constraints. That's through relocation and referral, right? Broker to broker referral. I always, you know, kind of have that chip in the back of my mind, and I talk to every new agent that comes on the company, and I tell them, you know, as a new agent, you're gonna wanna fish in whatever pond it takes, right? You're gonna row that boat out as far away from shore as you need to catch that fish. I get it, but I think we also have to think, okay, if I'm rowing, that time that I'm rowing, I'm not fishing. So if I wasn't rowing and I was fishing back on my island or my shore, how much more fish could I catch, right? How much more business could I get if I wasn't rowing, right? Or how do I make that row make money for me, right? How do I make calls when I'm in the car? How do I, you know, those kind of things? Do I shoot a video when I'm down there? Do I, you know, whatever? Can I make the row lucrative for me? And if you can't, then lots of agents will just refer it. They'll just say, hey, listen, I'm not the best for this market. You know, I'd love to help you. I want to get you a great agent that knows the market. That's the kind of the different side of the street thing, right? And then, yeah, sure, you give up some money, but you get paid for the name and the number, and then you keep fishing. So just have that conversation with your I use that great example so I can make that point. Have a conversation. If you're going to row, make sure that it's worth it, and make sure that you can make more money at the end of the row than you could have if you just stood on the shore and fished. I hope that analogy makes sense to people. Natasha is a big fisherman, so she gets it. Okay. She does a lot of fishing, do you, Natasha? Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, but you did exactly what I would have you do. Go out there, prove that it's not a drug. Prove to yourself and prove to them, right? If you're efficient and you use technology, I think communicating video to this seller is going to be super important, because, you know, weekly updates, communicating via video to him, do your weekly updates on video, Zoom with, you know, Zoom the stats that you're showing stats. Let him see you working is going to be important. Anybody else have anything else? Okay, I got about 10 minutes. I probably talked too long like I normally do, but I'm going to jump in and just, okay, so I'll just really quickly do kind of what I do. I'll let you watch me comp out a property. And this is the one I used before, and I only use this one because I know this property intimately, and you'll understand why I say that in a minute. You guys can see the screen, right? All right. So this joker bought this house quite a while ago, and he wants to sell it. And so I just look at, first thing I do is I look at bedroom bath count, right? I would have talked, when I talked to this person and set the appointment, I would have said, so I would have looked at when I'm talking to them, I would have said, so your house on Elsinore has, well, I want to make sure that you haven't made any changes that aren't reflected in the public record. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths. It's about 2,300 odd square feet. Have you added anything since you bought it? A pool. This house has a pool. It says it's a pool. Probably means it's been there already. But if it said no, and they added one, maybe they lived there 20 years, right? So just have a conversation. Make sure you know. Oh yeah, we added a 300 square feet, or we, you know, blew out the master. Now they're going to tell you about well, we remodeled and we put in gold-plated shower curtain rods and all that. That's fine. That speaks to amenities. But what you're really looking for is, has anything about the footprint of this property changed, right? And so once I know that, I just usually, might as well talk about efficiency while we're here. I'll just copy and paste this guy. I'll go into detail, right? Search. I'll do this here, I'll take this down to 120. And then single family residence, of course. And then I just pop over to the map. Tell me, there we go. Without making any additional changes, I pop over to the map, I put it in there, and I hit enter, right? Everybody saw me, I pasted in this field up here, I hit enter, and it pulled up the property on the map for me. So now I get to see active pendings, solds, and coming soons in this area generally, right? Okay, and then I want to say, all right, well, what does a half mile look like or so, right? That's, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect, but there's about a half mile. And because I know this market, right? I know this neighborhood. I know that this is a little bit more out than a half mile, but I know it's this exact same neighborhood. And I know this is a little bit more outside that piece over here, but I know it's very similar. So because I know it, I can make those changes. And frankly, also, I know that this is very similar, right? So I can do that. And that includes this. But what I also like to do is I like to go in here and go ahead and click on the ones that I have up in my, and actually I could have done this in a more efficient way. Sorry, I could have, when I drew that circle, I could have went back into the results and clicked on all of them. And then I could have came back into the match or the map and they would have all been clicked. But my point is, I like to have, again, I'm doing this the slow way, but I like to have everything that is within that original kind of search. I like to have it indicated, so when I go back to results, I can be looking at it. I know what is, and then I can say, oh yeah, those other ones are my outliers because they're a little bit further away, this 915. Okay, so let's go back and look at, what does that give me? My internet's running a little bit slow. Okay, there. So I do this in a couple of different, I got 17 things to look at. And the reason I clicked on those, the ones that were right around the property, is because I know that it would have been interesting and I would have needed to know if there was homes below this, right? If I had higher values that were on the outlying areas or significantly more outlying areas that are less, right? It just helps me understand, okay, I've got a pretty good picture of this, and I don't really need to go outside, right? This palisade, does this help me? This probably does, right? It's just outside of my half mile, well within range that would be acceptable. It's about the same years, within 10 years, it's about the same square footage, about the same lot. It doesn't have a pool. 885, oh, I want that one, right? I want that, so I'm taking it. Camden doesn't really help me. I mean, I don't need, what I'm seeing that is I'm high sevens and maybe mid eights kind of thing, maybe higher, right? Depending on condition. I may even be in the higher eights. So these ones on the sixes don't really matter to me. And then, so what I'll do here is I'll go back and I'll now kind of more dial this in. So I'm at 2,300. So I'll probably go 1,900 to 2,700 on the living square footage. I'm going to go, I'm at 19, I'm at 1958. So I'll just go 1950 to 1969, right? That gives me 10 houses. I would probably leave everything else alone. Nothing else really, nothing needs to be switched, right? I got, now if I didn't have anything, if I had just, didn't have enough cops, I only had a few, then I'd maybe push back on the date a little bit, right? I'd go all the way back to 180 days, right? I would push out a little bit further on the map to go to the full, you know, but I know, because I know the market, I know my area, I know I can't really go, I mean, I can't really go much. This is across a different street. It becomes a different area, different kind of houses. It's got a golf course here, but the quality of the builds are a little bit lower. There's 70s houses, 60s, 70s houses. That's Canyon Crest. So I really like to stay here if I can, right? But what do we see? What are we missing? Anybody see? I got some, this is pretty good. I got some what's happened. I've got some what's happening, but what don't I have? I think these are all about the same as the subject. This all looks real good. Look at all these numbers compare nicely. They fit inside of our criteria.
There's nothing coming soon or active.
I don't got any actives, right?
We're coming soon.
We all know. So what I do, I put these in a cart. I add them to my cart, and usually, I mean, I can add to that cart, so doesn't confuse me. And then I go, okay, I gotta figure out, how do I get, what is it gonna take me to start looking and get some actives on this list? So I go ahead and pull out everything. That's only one, right? I got one active. It's a lot smaller. Right, so I'm thinking, okay, what do I have to do? Let's go ahead and go out. Oops. What does a mile get me, right? And I'm gonna start searching, because I do like to bring some actives. Okay, what does this get me? This is in a, I know this is in a park. This is in an HOA situation. Hampton, same thing. They're smaller, they're less quality build. They have super small lots, right? So at least I could go ahead and add those in. And this is a, you know, much bigger house on a lot more land. It's more of an estate, but at least I can go ahead and add them to my listings. All right, so I think those are it's pretty simple, but those are pretty good. Okay, I got 2 more minutes. And then I want to show you Cloud CMA real quick. And I promise I'll educate myself on the RPR one, and so I can see if it's any better. That I liked. All right, I like Cloud CMA. I just put my address in here. I choose it. I say fetch listings. It's going to pull just those listings that I chose, right? And then this is, to me, this is important because it helps you follow the telling the story, what's happened, what's happening, what has happened. I go ahead and change it to sort listings by status. I go ahead and invert it. So I've got all my actives, and then I'm going to drag you can drag and drop. I'm just going to drag and drop. So they're in order, right? Somehow they come out of order. I treat actives under contract backups the same as pendings for analysis purposes, right? Then I just drag all these into the right areas. There we go. Okay. And then hit customize report. I can add some stuff in. I can choose the actual listing detail. I can put that in. That makes the report really thick, adds a lot to it. So generally I keep it out, but I'll show you some of the better. You can customize the cover letter in here. You can put your resume on here. You can add anything to it that you want. But some of the tools that I think are important, right? It gives you kind of a breakdown. I like creating my own custom sheet through Excel because it gives me more data. I can pick, when it's sold, how much it's sold, dollar per square foot, all that good stuff. But it gives me a nice little comparison. It starts giving me comps. But then what it gives me that I really like is back here at the very end, there's my resume. It gives me this. This is a good one. This is the sold property analysis. So for everything that was sold, every sold property sold for 3.3% more than list price in an average of 10 days, right? That's something important to know when you're developing a pricing strategy, right? That means that people bid those houses up. That means my idea of starting at reasonable-ish and having it come up it gets you to the highest that you can get, right? And then this is a nice one because it shows you how bad Zillow is, right? Well, Zillow says, well, Zillow is at least 50,000 off. And then it gives you a resume if you want to add it and that kind of thing. So that's a quick version of CMA. It's 10:02. Does anybody have any questions or anything that they want to say to the group, or any clarifications or anything? Hopefully that was of value, at least gave you some insight into how I look at creating a pricing strategy. Remember, you're not giving a price and you're not giving a market value. You're developing a pricing strategy, and you're starting with the most defendable value position that you can. All right, everybody. Always pick up something new. Yeah, right. All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And you folks have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.